We say, yes, Lord. And Janet is back from 7 weeks. Hallelujah! Glory to God. You may all have a seat. Janet, come up. Can you share? And I know this is but 5 minutes. We're giving you a little extra time because everybody else shared and took 2 to 3, but you went on a little extra place. For those that don't know, tell them she was on our trip in the Philippines, but then she went further to other places.
Wow. I came back the first of the week, and I've been crying since I got back. God gave me a message on hearts, and I preached it in 17 different churches. And hearts were changed. People were struck by the power of God, and I just stood amazed at what God was doing because I knew I wasn't any part of it, but God was. I went to the Philippines with a group, but I happened to know someone that was in northern Philippines, thinking Philippines was a small place. It took him 6.5 hours to get me back to the airport, but it's a man that's 83 years old, 81, his wife is 83, and they took me from church to church plants that they'd done over the years for 60 years in ministry. And they only wished that I could have been there for 6 weeks so they could have taken me to all the churches in that region that they had started. 64 churches, but we went to 10 of them. And the power of God was there. And I was just struck with what God did. Then I joined the group, and that's where God began to work on me. So we never go on these trips unless God changes us. And I'll just share one little piece of that because it was very powerful. Pastor Dave asked me to preach one message to the pastors on offense. And I thought, I don't know how I can do that because I've never been offended. I just don't have that many friends, I guess. But I believe that you need to preach out of your experience. Otherwise, it's coming from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So I asked God to give me a little experience. And by the end of the day after Pastor Dave asked me, it was the next day, we went up to the mountain. We got up like at 6 something to get on a bus at 7 so we could go up and be part of an amazing, amazing day. But in the midst of it, I wasn't feeling so great. I was feeling very, very old. I was on the back of the van, and when I left Denver.
It was a jeepney. It wasn't a van. It was an open-air jeepney.
Well, there was a bit of discomfort because I had left Denver having fractured my pelvis in 2 places. And so I left Denver. God said, go, you go anyway. And so I left Denver in a wheelchair. They took me from the check-in counter with my husband, who literally lifted me into the airport, like carrying me almost, till they put me in a wheelchair, and that got me to the plane. And then in Tokyo, another wheelchair. Guam, another wheelchair. And I hadn't told the people I was coming to minister with that I was in the condition I was, so I had to kind of hang in there with a lot of discomfort for a few days. But God caused me to have this attitude. Let the attitude surface, I guess. And I was complaining, and Charlotta was amazing. I was sitting next to her. I said, I'm in the back. I'm in so much pain. I feel so old. And I think it was 10:30 at night when they decided to have that breakfast or that meal for us up the stairs. I couldn't go upstairs. So I sat at the bottom with my attitude getting a little more refined and not eating, getting back on the van with everybody else, and ended up back in the room. And that night, I just crashed into bed. And the next morning, I'm in my shower, and I'm saying, okay, God, what's this about? And I'm supposed to share that next day. So I'm saying, okay, I can nail this hand in, I can get these feet in, but I can't get this hand nailed to the cross. I can't get this flesh crucified because it feels very alive. And I had a great roommate. Her name is Nikki. And Nikki said, I came out, I says, okay, Nikki, I got a job for you. Can you nail this hand in? She said, I didn't bring my hammer, but I have a pair of chopsticks. She whips her chopsticks out of her purse and begins to beat on my hand. with that, we laughed. I said, okay, Lord, what is it? He said, you have a spirit of entitlement. So I go to Brooke as soon as I see someone. I say, Brooke, cast it out. And the Lord said to me, you can be entitled to be old if you want to be old, and I'll give you all the benefits of old age. You can be entitled to be hurting, and I'll give you all the benefits of someone that's hurting. Or I can give you health, and I can give you youth. And I chose health and youth. Had I not gone through that morning I made a choice. I could have never survived the jungles of Borneo. When you're in the jungles without air conditioning, without screens on windows, and you have spiders that are this big in your room, and they're poisonous, and you're sleeping with them, and the beetles, and I was there on the 21st of March. I was there that week. I was there for 11 days in the jungle. I was with people that everyone was dying around me, it seemed like. A man got hepatitis from the church, and he died, and he had hepatitis too. And I sat holding his wife as she cried a day afterwards. I was just in a lot of situations where a family lost their 8-year-old daughter to a virus. It's just all over. It's just like really hard. And so that's brought a lot of tears. There's been a lot of connections. But I just want to say that God is just amazing. I just had the most amazing, amazing journey. I preached messages that I can't believe I had the courage to preach. I didn't even know what I was saying. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just got up there, and all of a sudden the Lord just began to download. I'd walk into a church, and instantly I'd know what all the issues of that church were. Of course, one of them I walked in one day. I'll share this. This will be the last thing I shared. But this is just the power of God. I walk in, and something hit me, and I said, what was that? It wasn't good. And the only people in the church, because I'd gone in before the pastor, was the worship team that was practicing. And the Lord said, there's some issues here with the internet. So I preached on that. I had 30 men at the end of the service in that congregation come forward, and the pastor and I spent an hour and a half praying over them. That was the kind of response we had. You can't lead worship and have anything impure in your heart. You got to be pure. And I just came into places that I didn't know existed in God. And I'm not going back. I'm going to cry more. I'm going to weep more. I'm going to intercede more. I want to be transformed by the power of God so he can use me. I'm just amazed at God. That's my story.